The voice for real estate, a presentation of CWTAR, the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors, and sponsored by Leaders Mortgage Services, Allstate Insurance, Angie Hooten Hughes agent, and Pete Dubuisson, National Property Inspections, and he is here with us this morning, along with our host, Brent Ward. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jimmy. How are you this morning?
Well, aside from a little West Tennessee pollen festivalitis, I'm doing quite well. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. You too. I think everybody's suffering from that.
And I'm telling you,
my youngest son is suffering from it as well too. He just gets confused on what's asthma and what's allergies.
Yeah,
so.
I know that feeling quite well.
Yeah, okay,
yeah,
well,
yeah. Know it well.
But it was a nice day on Saturday.
It was a beautiful weekend. Absolutely gorgeous
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah, I actually went outside on the patio and watched some of the basketball from out there.
There you go.
Screens are a little smaller, but it was nice out there.
I actually got outside and threw baseball and football and frisbee, and my wife and my daughter jumped on the trampoline. So yeah, we had a great weekend.
Yeah, spring is in the air.
Spring is in the air.
Yes,
I know
it
it.
is. Missed you last week, but you were out doing something of a business nature, I'm told.
I was at the Tennessee Spring Conference over in Cool Springs, and I think about it now, I probably should have just done a call-in from there. That would have been an interesting show.
That would have been.
Yeah,
I
could have just talked to people while I was walking around over
and
there.
written off the phone call.
And there you go.
Yeah,
That's
we actually blew the whistle on you. We told everybody that was actually excuse number 24.
Okay. We better come up with about 6 more, because I'm going to need about 6 more.
Oh, man. We're glad to have you back.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be back. I enjoy it. So, talk about spring. Of course, with spring comes real estate.
Yes, indeed.
And with real estate comes an important part of real estate, and that would be the home inspection part of real estate.
Very important part.
Very important part. So, I'm happy to have with me this morning Mr. Pete Dubuisson, as Jimmy has already mentioned. Pete, how are you this morning?
Great. I didn't do any trampolining this weekend, but otherwise it was good.
Did you work this weekend?
I did. Yes, I did, and also I had my granddaughter's birthday party.
There you go.
That's important.
That's the really important stuff right
yes,
there.
Indeed.
Is the family. And speaking of the birthdays of family and stuff, let me just do a quick shout out. My mother's birthday is today, so happy birthday, Mom! I just thought I'd throw that out there real quick. And I'm not telling y'all how old she is, so don't worry about that. All right, so moving on. So home inspections. A lot of people are not familiar with home inspections. Okay, Pete, and having been a real estate agent, I'm very familiar with Pete. As a matter of fact, Pete's been doing this for a while. Pete, how long have you been doing this?
I'm in my 15th year.
15th year. Okay, so he's just about 5 years shy of where I was when I got started. So he kind of came on shortly after I got going, and I've been using Pete personally for a long time. And just out of curiosity, I'm sure you don't know, but have any idea how many home inspections you've done for me personally?
Not really.
No, I didn't figure. That's okay, because I have the answer. It's 3. You've done 3 home inspections for me personally. And he's also done 3 home inspections for my family personally as well, too. So I've used Pete 6 times throughout my real estate career. So that ought to tell you something. Now, you said 15 years. So with 15 years, how many home inspections would you think you can do in 15 years?
Oh, I would say probably about 4,000 or more.
Wow.
4,000 home inspections.
Wow.
That's a lot of home inspections.
That's a lot of inspections.
That's a lot of inspections. Now, he did mention something to me right before we got ready to come on show, which is kind of an abnormality, which was, you want to tell him what you told me?
Sure. And 4,000 inspections I've done over that time, roughly. I've had 2, including one last week, where there was not an issue with the report.
How about that?
Just 2.
Just
yeah,
2
there's been
out
2
of
homes
4,000.
out of 4,000 where I didn't have a list of flaws, imperfections, or problems.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, that is crazy.
And if I did an inspection of my own house, I'd have a list.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. And he's done my house, and I guarantee he'd have a whole
Yeah,
brand new list if he
mine
came
too.
to my house right now.
Mine
That's
too.
just the way it works. All right, so and I'll tell you a quick little story. This is why I use Pete over and over again, me personally. Pete did a home inspection on the house that my wife and I currently live in now. And one day I was talking to Pete. We lived in the house, I don't know, 6 years probably, and I was talking to him somewhere we were. And, me being the real estate, I was like, by the way, Pete, you missed something on my property inspection report. And I told him what it was, and he's like, I'm surprised I missed that. And I was like, oh, yeah, you missed that. Well, I got an email from Pete like 15 minutes later after he got home, and he went back and pulled my property inspection report. He hadn't missed it at all. I just forgot that it was on there.
Aha.
So that tells you right there. Pete was like, no, he didn't miss anything. Who are we talking about here? So, and I appreciated that because, and that's the type of person Pete is. So I can't say enough good things about him because I'm familiar with him. Now, Monday, when I wasn't here, we had the Veterans and Real Estate Show, and I'd like to point out that Pete is a veteran. So, Pete, what did you do?
Well, first I graduated from the Naval Academy, and from there, my service selection was the Marine Corps.
All right.
And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was a captain.
There you go.
Excellent.
Yeah, we thank you for that, and also that's
Absolutely.
also what makes Pete such a great home inspector because he's very precise and he's got the same set of guidelines that he follows every time. All right, so let's just jump right into this because this is the question that everybody always has: is what does a home inspector do? What's involved in a home inspection?
Basically, we're determining the condition of the house and its systems and components. So we're looking at everything from the ground to the top of the roof. We're looking in the electrical panel for issues with the wiring, testing the outlets to make sure not only they're working but they're wired properly. We're looking for the drainage around the house as to whether water is flowing away or ponding next to it, going into the crawl space, that kind of thing. We're looking for plumbing leaks. We're looking for the condition of the structural components, both in the crawl space and the attic. We're basically stem to stern. And it's a process that takes roughly 4 to 5 hours just to look at the house and to document all of those issues, which is done with a very thorough report, too. You're usually going to get a report out of this process that's about 40 to 50 pages long. It'll have dozens of photographs. And it will summarize at the end all of those items that were deemed either marginal or defective. And the other thing I often do is spend time with the buyer at the house. Most buyers like to come in towards the end, and we'll cover everything that I've gone over, show them the report page by page, and answer any questions that they may have, and actually go see, touch, or feel anything that they wanted to know more about.
All right. Let me go back to something you mentioned over there. So you talked about the electrical panel, and you talked about the systems, the electrical systems in the house and the working components. Like, I know you guys, do you have to be licensed to be a home inspector?
That's right.
In the state of Tennessee, you do have to be licensed. And it wasn't always that way, though, correct?
No, it actually started in 2005 in June. And that was my first full year in the business. And when you say licensed, it isn't a one-time deal. You have to get relicensed every 2 years. In order to do that, you have to take a certain amount of continuing education courses approved by the state, 36 hours, I think, every 2 years.
Every 2 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's actually good to know because real estate agents, we need 16 hours every 2 years of continuing education, but pretty much the same process. And I will say that before the licensing period came up, every Tom, Dick, and Harry was a home inspector. All you had to do was pop it out there on your website.
That's right.
Or just tell everybody that's what you did for a living, and they could come do it. So nobody was happier that they went to licensing for the state of Tennessee than we were as realtors. I can tell you that right now. So, all right. So you mentioned in there about the electrical and that thing, and I can tell you from seeing Pete do a home inspection before, they actually take off the panel around the box and check the wirings. What are you looking for when you're in there looking around?
Well, for one thing, you want to make sure that you don't see anything that looks charred.
Definitely.
That would be a good thing not to see, right?
You don't want to see wires that have the insulation looks like it's melted or curling up. You're looking for whether you have circuit breakers with 2 wires in them instead of 1, which is a very common thing, actually. If you have a ground fault or an arc fault breaker, which protects you from things like, let's say you're in your bathroom and you're using a hair dryer, you have your hand in water and the dryer falls into the sink, you got your hand in there at the same time, the ground fault will protect you by instantly interrupting the current. And sometimes that is on outlets, inside the bathroom. Sometimes it's in a breaker inside the panel box. Even in the electrical, you're even looking down to the fact of whether you have smoke detectors in the house and whether they're working, and if you've got them in enough rooms. But it's very important. It's not often you find major issues with the panel, but you got to check each and every time that you can check, because every once in a while you come across something that's actually dangerous and could be the source of the fire.
Okay. Well, and that's the reason I pointed that out, because, there's a few things that I can do around the house, electrical being one of them. My dad taught me how to do that stuff. That's what he did in the Air Force. But I don't like dealing with electrical because electrical bites back. And I've been bitten a few times in my years, even though I call myself to be cautious. But sometimes it just happens. So, and a lot of that has to do with the way things are wired. You have to be careful. Just because it looks like it's done this way doesn't necessarily mean it's done that way. I have a story on that. I'm not going to tell it this morning, but all right, so moving on to that. So you check out all the appliances, the dishwasher, the stove, the microwave. I mean, if anything's electrical inside the house, including the HVAC unit, you check that out as well too. Now that's kind of a specialty, but how do you check an HVAC unit? Because that's
Well, all the standards say is that you turn it on and see that it's working. It's pulling out hot air and cold air. I generally really always go a bit farther than that. I look on the data plate of the furnace to see what the air temperature rise should be. It might say, for instance, that this furnace should heat the air between the return, where the air goes through your filter, and the supplies, where the actual hot air comes out in your rooms, that air should be heated up somewhere between 30 and 60 degrees by the time it makes that trip. So I measure that. Same thing with the air conditioning. The air conditioner should cool the air that goes through your vent and then comes into your rooms by at least 14 degrees. So I'm measuring that I'm getting at least that much difference in the temperature. And I'll actually put photos in the report showing what the return temp and the supply temp, and so we document what that difference is.
I've seen those photos. They got a little temperature gauge sitting on the vent showing you what the temperature is with the air on and or the heat, depending on which one you're showing pictures for.
And with appliances, you mentioned, for instance, I think you did the Whirlpool tub maybe. We just don't check that there is one, but fill the tub up, run it, let it run for 10 or 15 minutes. Check underneath if there are access panels, see if there are leaks. See if there are any leaks coming from the nearby shower. The most important part of an inspection of a house with a crawl space is going under the house, kind of going back or into the plumbing issue. The other thing I do when I'm inspecting under a house is that I have every faucet and water fixture in the house running. So when I'm under the house, if there is a leak, you're much more likely to see it, like in the house I did for you.
Yes, that's right.
The reason I saw it is because water was dripping out of an open drain.
That's right. It was. Matter of fact, it had been dripping. Of course, this was a second owner home. We were the second owners. It had been dripping such a long time, it had formed its own little stalagmites down there.
Not good.
Yes,
so it had been dripping for quite some time around there. I saw when he sent me the picture 6 years later, when I remembered that, when he remembered that he did not miss it, but I just failed to mention it. And actually, there's a picture that Paul just put up on the screen there. If you can pull it back, that's actually from one of Pete's home inspections that he's done for those at home. Pete, describe what we're looking at right here. This is not my house, by the way, but Pete, tell me what we're looking at right there.
This is an older house that it was completely remodeled. And in fact, the floor and framing here, a lot of it was new. And this is something that the average homeowner, if it was occurring, you'd never know it because it's under the house and it's difficult to get to. So this shows that I did have the shower and the master bathroom running. And when I got close to the master bathroom, I could see that the water was coming straight out of the shower drain into the crawl space. So that's water you see flowing. Someone who was remodeling the house, maybe it was lunch break, and that was what they were going to do next, was install the drain pipe.
Right.
Somebody probably forgot.
Wow.
And it's a fairly common thing.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point you mentioned that, because I've had that happen even on a new construction house that I bought once, where something similar to that happened on a new construction house. We'll get into that in just a second. So you mentioned going under the house. I was going to ask you about that, because some home inspectors don't go under the house. And when we sold that new construction house, that's the first time. We were the seller, so we had nothing to do with the home inspection. But I found out later that that home inspector did not go under the house, because the problem that I had when I bought it was fixed, and it was way back at the other end of the house, back by the kitchen. But they didn't point it out on their home inspection, but I had noted it on my property condition disclosure form, which I had to fill out, because the new buyer called me, and I was like, no, I pointed that out. And they're like, well, our home inspector didn't point it out. And I was like, that's because your home inspector didn't go under the house. He took down the panel door and got a flashlight and shined it up under there and looked around under the new construction house, and that was his under the house report. So
yeah, I can't say I love doing it, but you have to.
Yes, I am not a fan as an adult to crawl under my house. I can tell you right now.
No.
Yeah, there's so many things that can go wrong under there that people just won't see. Not just plumbing leaks, but standing water that's coming somewhere from around the house that can lead to mold. Air conditioning ducts that are disconnected. It's amazing how many times you go under a house and find that your HVAC system is heating and cooling your
crawl space.
Yep.
And Paul just popped up another picture right there. Now this one happens to be in the attic, I'm pretty sure, from the insulation. Correct. But that's a classic example. Explain to our listening audience what we're looking at right here on this one.
It's just, as you say, up in the attic where an HVAC duct disconnected itself. Now, it's not this particular one, but I remember doing a house. The buyer joined me and said, one thing we're a little concerned about is how high the energy bills are. And I said, well, I think I can shed some light on that for you. And I showed them earlier when I went into the crawl space, the main HVAC duct going to one half of the house, as it went over the side into the lower part of the attic, like over a cliff, it had disconnected totally.
Oh, wow.
So one entire half of the house was not getting heating or air, and all that air was going into the attic. And I think the previous owners had lived with it for several years.
Wow, that's amazing. And I hear that all the time. And I know in the house I'm in right now, I just found one that it just barely had separated, but it was enough. It was pushing cold and hot air out underneath the house.
Right.
And I had to, and now this was long after I'd lived there. I've lived in that same house for 18 years. So, yeah, a lot of stuff goes on in 18 years. So real quick, we're going to take a quick break real quick, and we'll come back with Pete Dubuisson with National Property Inspections in just a second. So, Jimmy?
Absolutely. Just a quick reminder, this program is a presentation of CWTAR, the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors, the voice for real estate. Brent Ward is our host each week, and sponsored by Leaders Mortgage Services, 36 Stonebridge Boulevard. Their phone number is 731-215-6678. Also sponsored by Allstate Insurance Company. Angie Hooten Hughes is the agent, 250 Carriage House Drive here in Jackson, 668-1990. And also a sponsor is our guest today, Pete Dubuisson, National Property Inspections, 467-6250. We'll turn it back over to Brent.
All right. Well, we are here with Mr. Pete Dubuisson with National Property Inspectors, if you just joined us. And we're talking about home inspections and what all is involved. Now, a question that I used to get all the time when I was a realtor, and I think I brought it up to Jimmy, but I'm going to bring it up to you too, is what is the difference between a home inspection and appraiser? Because this is something that all buyers get hit with on every transaction.
Right. And sometimes I'll get called and they'll say, I'm looking for an appraisal.
Okay.
and I get the same call looking for him.
That's what I figured. If you don't know, I'm sitting here with both an appraiser and a home inspector. So
right.
Perfect question to ask.
So a home inspector is looking at the condition of the home, its systems, and its components, whether there are leaks or whether the air conditioner is not working properly, or there's an issue inside the electrical panel. The appraiser is just looking at the value of the house,
right,
compared with other homes of the same type and size in that area, not necessarily what issues there are with the house.
Gotcha. Okay. That sounds pretty self-explanatory to me.
Yeah.
I think I got it. Jimmy, you got that?
That's right.
All right, he's got
Got
it.
it.
He concurs with your conclusion on the difference, so we're good to move on. All right, so on a home inspection, on average, about what's the price of a home inspection? I know it probably varies, but,
It varies a lot based primarily on the size of the house, how old it is, because in general, the older the home, the more issues are going to accumulate over the years. That's just normal. Whether there's a crawl space or not, it takes longer to go underneath the house. And typically, I would say the average is around $375.
$375. That's not bad at all, especially for what you're getting out of the home inspection.
That's
I would
correct.
think. Yeah, especially if you're a bit of a handyman and there's some things that you can do that kind of gives you an idea as you're getting ready to purchase this new property, what things you're going to need to take care of once you get into the house, correct?
That's right.
And sometimes you can find some pretty major stuff in there that needs, like we've already talked about, electrical panel problems, heating and air duct underneath the house, plumbing issues. Those are like all major deals that you really need to get taken care of. But I'm sure you run across more things underneath there, maybe even a few structural things that might be issues. You ever run across things like that?
Absolutely. Foundation piers that are falling over.
Oh,
Framing that is cracked or that's not properly supported.
okay.
As you go through the house, you might notice some soft spots or bumps in the floor. Sometimes that's because the floor has been fixed, because they have put additional supplemental piers underneath. And when they're trying to get everything as evenly as possible, you end up with a little low spots, little high spots, and you need to confirm that, though.
Is that and I'm asking a question, and you might not be the right person to ask, but that just hit me right on the head. Is that a major, like super major concern when you got floors that are not 100% level where they've done some extra?
No, but you just need to know why that is.
Okay.
Generally speaking, now if it was a brand new house,
That's a problem. Yes.
That's a problem.
problem.
Yes.
But over the years, every house settles. If we're talking about a house built in the 50s, let's say,
Right.
there would have been a plumbing leak at some time, some wood rot that resulted from that, some repairs that had to take place, hopefully.
Okay.
And sometimes those repairs are extensive enough they have to put in new piers or shore up the ones they have, and they have to do some re-leveling.
Okay.
And it's hard to be perfect.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. It's just a question that I have when you were talking about that, because it's really not uncommon when you go
No.
into older homes to find some unleveling of floors. It's just that's the way it is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's any major damage. It just means something has been done. And I figure settling happens over the years as well, too.
One of my pieces of inspection equipment is a marble.
There you go. I used to
in
use a
very
golf
handy,
ball,
doesn't
so
Yep.
yeah, either one. As long as it's round, it'll roll. That'll take care of that.
Marble
Right.
and an ice pick come in very handy, don't they?
I think Pete uses a knife for that.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
is what he uses, but
Or
I know what
pocket
that's
knife,
for.
yeah.
That's right. He uses a pocket knife for that. All right. So now you mentioned earlier when you were talking about what home inspectors do. So what kind of time frame? Depending, I guess that depends on the size of the house as well too.
Exactly.
But like a day, a full day. How does that?
Well, I do have homes that take all day.
That would be a larger home, I would
Be
assume.
a larger home with a crawl space, older, I've done antebellum homes.
Oh, nice.
So you can imagine how long that might take. So I have been there all day and into the night. What I tell folks is that it's very rare that you don't get the report that day that I do the inspection. It may not be before you go to sleep, but it'll be there when you wake up.
Yep.
Okay.
But generally, it'll take half a day.
Half a day, which typically, based on what you just said right there, I'm assuming they would get their report by the end of that day.
By the end of that day.
Okay. That's always good to have right in front of you, because I know as a realtor we're looking for that report. And speaking of realtors, and I mentioned that several times, having been one, who do you actually work for? Because this is a question that comes up frequently, I think, with new buyers, and I think there's a little misconception out there in the buying world about who does the home inspector work for. So who do you work for? Do you work for the realtor or do you work for the buyer?
The buyer, and the buyer.
There you go, right there. And who hires you to do the home inspection report?
The buyer, normally.
And who pays for that home inspection report?
The buyer.
There you go. All right.
And they're the only ones that have the right to the inspection.
That's right. That's really key right there, is that as the buyer, and I'm pointing this out, and I know Pete will back me up on this, is you're the buyer, you bought and paid and hired for this home inspection. It belongs to you. It is your home inspection report. And unless you give Pete your permission to give that home inspection report to your realtor or anybody else that requests a copy, they would have to give you that permission to do so. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I said the buyer usually, but sometimes it's the seller of the house. That's becoming a little more popular, that people want to find out what the major issues are before they list the house, because sometimes people will get all the way through the process of having a contract and they feel they're a week or two away from closing, and they get a home inspection and they find out something they had no idea about, and it either blows the deal or they're back a month or two having to get things repaired, and it could fall completely through.
Actually, on one of the home inspections you did for my parents, that was a pre-sale home inspection. They were getting ready to put their house on the market, but they'd lived there for 20 years, had no idea what needed to be done. Had Pete come out, do a pre-inspection before they even marketed it, and fixed all the stuff that Pete found on his report, so that, and then supplied the new buyer with the report and a list of all the things that had been done.
Yep.
And then, like I say, most folks don't go under their house.
That's right, they don't. I need to go under mine, but I sure don't want to. And I can't get my 11-year-old to go under there with me. He's like, I don't want to go under the house, and I don't think my 25-year-old will fit under the house. So anyways, all right, so moving on down the list, we talked about new construction for just a second. So new construction is a little different, though, than doing a pre-existing home. Is that a different license or something different involved with that, or can?
Not at all.
Okay. All right.
It's a normal home inspection.
Okay.
And I have people say sometimes that, well, I don't need to get an inspection because it's a new house. And that's just not the case. It's nothing against the builders, but they have a lot of subcontractors, and the subcontractors have a lot of folks working for them, and there's a lot of things that can be missed, not by incompetence, but just human nature. I think you have a picture somewhere in a group where I got on the roof and saw that the top of the chimney was missing.
Paul, do you happen to have a picture of a chimney in there somewhere? And speaking of, while we're waiting on Paul to pull that up, just want to thank Paul. That's Paul Schultze, is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's with Worthy Road Studios, and he does our Facebook Live feed for us. And there he is. He pulled it up right there for us. So, Pete, what are we looking at? Describe that for us.
Just what you say, the top of the chimney, the whole crown, the flue, nothing is there.
You know, I'm not an engineer, but chances are that's going to leak.
There's a really good chance of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things might find a home down in there. There's all kinds of things that
all
could happen
kinds of
there.
critters could get in there.
I remember it surprised me. I got up to the roof ridge and just glanced to my right, and, you know, the classic double take.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
The chimney is wide open.
That's right.
That's crazy. All right. Well, we're with Pete Dubuisson this morning with National Property Inspections. And, Pete, if somebody need to get in contact with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Best way is to call me. The number is 731-467-6250.
All right. Do you have a website or anything like that they can go to?
MPI.web/Dubuisson, and that one's tough.
Yeah, that one is. Yeah, you got to know how to spell Dubuisson in order to get that in there.
That's right.
All right. Spell that for us just so they'll know.
Okay, I'm going to do it phonetically.
All right. Do it.
D as in Delta, U as in uniform, B as in Bravo, U as in uniform, I as in India, S as in Sierra, another S, O as in Oscar, N as in November.
That'll work.
I hope everybody got that down.
Spelled just like it sounds.
Just like it
just
sounds.
like it sounds. Just like it sounds. Well, Pete, we appreciate you being here on the show. And like I said, it always just kind of flies by when you get going in here because it doesn't seem like we've been here that long. But we want to thank you for being on the show. I've done so much work with Pete in the past, so I'm just happy to have him back. It's a different capacity, but glad to get to work with you again. And appreciate you being a sponsor of the radio show as well, too.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And just real quick, I just want to remember to bring up that CWTAR is having their scholarship golf tournament on April the 25th at the Humboldt Golf and Country Club. And if you've got any questions or would like to play or be a sponsor, please reach out to us at 731-668-4907. That's 731-668-4907. And with that, Jimmy, I appreciate it, as always.
Absolutely. It's been fun, and this has been a presentation of the Central West Tennessee Association of Realtors. It is the voice for real estate and sponsored by Leaders Mortgage Services, Allstate Insurance, and National Property Inspections. The mid-morning mix continues on 93.1.
Don't just dream it.